future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Thank you for being
Boulevard.
Life is a banquet, and most poor suckers are starving to death.
I'd like to propose a toast.
This is On the Rocks with Alexander, coming at you from Sunset Gower Studios in the heart of Hollywood, where I drink with your favorite celebrities and we talk about fashion, entertainment, pop culture, reality TV, and that's about it. So pop a cork, pour a glass, lean back, and enjoy On the Rocks every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on Universal Broadcasting Network.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Oh, Lord, ladies and gentlemen, it is going to be a bumpy night. We have a very special evening today. I am so excited. You know, sometimes you really love coming to work. I've had the pleasure of interviewing Shirley Jones, George Chakiris, Lainey Kazan, Ileana Douglas, and I'm so excited. You know, I'm a big movie buff, classic Hollywood. I can't get enough, and I just read this amazing book this weekend called Tippi, a Memoir, and as luck would have it, tonight we have the legendary Tippi Hedren with us. We're going to talk about so much from her book. We have some clips, some footage. And to help me with the ceremonies, I have returning to the show, Emmy-nominated actress, producer, just everything, author.
Everything.
Everything. Everything. Ileana Douglas, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So excited.
I'm excited.
I've had the pleasure of watching you on Turner Classic Movies.
Yes, thank you.
You're doing a great series called Trailblazing Women, and it's so amazing. It's women in film.
Yes, we did our first year. We focused on female directors, and this year we did actresses with social and historical contributions. So people like Lucille Ball, it was the first female studio head, and Jane Fonda, who has, obviously, done so much. Elizabeth Taylor, but what we focused on again is how much women have contributed to social causes that we aren't even aware of.
Right.
And so I think that giving them that context and seeing their films makes it really special. And we'll continue with the series again next year. And we're getting ready now for the Turner Classic for the Film Festival.
In April, I'm so excited.
Yes.
I'm very excited.
Which last year, as I was saying to Tippi, I saw Roar on the big screen, which is, and I don't recommend for the faint of heart, but it was an incredible, the TCM Film Festival, if anyone wants to come to Hollywood, and it is a really special film festival. I don't think there's anything like it in the country. I really don't.
No.
It's emotional, it's special, it's people who love movies, and having an opportunity to see some of these classic films. It's becoming even more special because we don't have that opportunity anymore. So,
well, I was talking to somebody. I miss having to go rent a movie at Blockbuster or whatever,
Yes.
because you'd be able to see all these films. You'd be like, oh, that looks interesting. It'd be a black and white film. You had no idea what it was. But now, youth can't just walk into a video store. They're only watching what's on Netflix or what's
Right.
on demand, and there's not a lot of classic movies on demand.
well, what I find hard is that it's context. It's someone getting you excited
Right.
about the film and the actors in the film, or if it's a film you've seen 100 times, getting a new approach, something you never knew about that film. So that when you see Casablanca, you see it with fresh eyes. And I always like to try to do that. For instance, I've seen Citizen Kane, just 20, 30 times. But last year, when we did the Trailblazing Women show, we talked about Dorothy Comingore, who was blacklisted, who made this film. And then Hearst personally went after her and destroyed her career, and it ruined her life. I mean, literally, and I was so unaware of that. And so we watched Citizen Kane now with a completely different perspective through the eyes of Dorothy Comingore, and it was a whole interesting, different film-going experience. So
Well, I tell you, like, knowing the stories behind film, like, I read I Blame Dennis Hopper, which is a
Yes.
great memoir that you wrote.
Thank you.
And you wrote this whole section about Cape Fear and your scene with Robert De Niro and your approach to it. And watching that scene, it had a whole different meaning and a whole different life to
Oh,
it.
thank you.
And then I had the benefit of going to your book reading.
Yes.
It was the Turner Classic weekend.
Yes, the film festival, yes.
And you had Jennifer Tilly there,
Yes.
Heather Matarazzo, Greg Proops was there reading passages from your book.
Yes, well, that was always my fantasy, to have people that were actually involved in some of these stories. Like, for instance, Jennifer Tilly, which I wrote in the book. I said I really only became friends with her so she could verify that all of this stuff really happened. But to have Jennifer read as Jennifer what I wrote about her was particularly funny. And again, some of my great actor friends who stop by, and we do these readings around town, book readings, and they're very funny. They're very entertaining.
I would tell our listeners, go to your Facebook fan page, Ileana Douglas.
Yes.
Because you post where you're going to be, but you literally have been sweeping the nation talking about your book.
Yes, the book is doing really well. It just came out on paperback. You can get it through Amazon. I also started doing a podcast called I Blame Dennis Hopper, where I, again, interview actors about film and film process. Again, that's what I'm really interested in. I love film history, and as some people know, my grandfather was Melvin Douglas, so I kind of grew up a little bit on the fringes of the the end of a era, hearing about the MGM studio system and getting to visit on the set of Being There and a couple of the other films he was in. So I love, I love talking about film history and interviewing people and getting all of their stories, because it's so important. I was watching, I don't know if you had seen it, Tippy, the documentary about Debbie Reynolds that just came out, and it was such a tragedy to me that she was trying to save all this Hollywood history,
right?
And they could not find a museum, and it's, you can't figure it out why Hollywood doesn't want to preserve its own history.
Well, I don't know if that's the culture of Hollywood. It's like, okay, what's next? What's happening? I mean,
Yes.
movies, it's so hard to find a really good movie. Even this year for award season, people are talking about these movies like they're
Yes.
amazing. I'm like, that's a good movie, but that's what a movie should be.
Okay, this is what I do with my movies. This is my movie-going experience. I go out. I am a member of the Academy, so I do go out and I try to see a lot of the movies in the theater. But usually when I come home as a palate cleanser, I watch a classic film.
Yeah.
Like, so I come home and I watch, Roaring Twenties with, James Cagney, or Grapes of Wrath. I find that settling. Like, all right, I've done what I'm supposed to do, and it's enjoyable. But what I really need now, I've had my appetizer, but now I really need a meal.
So I just real fast, you've interviewed a lot of greats, and we
Yes.
just heard about Jerry Lewis's
Yes.
travesty of an interview, which I don't blame him for, by the way.
No, I don't. Thank you for saying that. I don't either.
Because I listened to the interview, the guy that was interviewing him seemed totally unaware, and it was like he was reading the questions as fast as he could.
Yeah.
It's like, you're in the greatness of Jerry Lewis.
I know.
We know Jerry's a little grumpy, but you live to be that age and you do all this work. You could afford to be a little grumpy. I'd be grumpy.
Yeah.
I'm grumpy now.
It's no, I mean, I've had the privilege, obviously, of working with Jerry Lewis and interviewing him for Turner Classic Movies numerous times. He was one of the tribute award winners a couple of years ago there, and he's a great artist, and he's 91 years old. So it just surprises me, the cavalier attitude that went into that interview. It's painful. You know what I mean?
It really is.
And you have to be, and again, like working at Turner and working with wonderful people like Robert Osborne and Ben Mankiewicz, the research that they do, that I try to do, such gravitas dealing with these people. But on the other hand, then I always say, that's Jerry. He knows how to get a headline.
To this day, he knows how to get a headline.
So good for him. We love Jerry.
Real fast, I have to give a shout out to our sponsors. Thank you so much to Testloop. Have you ridden Testloop?
No, what is Testloop?
So Testloop it's a car service, and it goes from LA to Palm Springs, and back, obviously.
Sounds fun.
And then LA to Las Vegas, and
Okay.
it's affordable. And you sit in like this little pod in a Tesla, and it's pretty much on automatic pilot the whole way. Like, you don't drive the Tesla.
Wait, it's
Yeah.
not. No,
No, there's somebody sitting there.
driving,
No, but they press the autopilot and they sit there. When I rode Testloop, the guy
Yes.
was playing the accordion. I'm not even kidding you. But it's a luxury service. Like you sit in your own chair, they give you
Yes.
snacks, you have noise canceling headphones, and it's the easiest ride.
That sounds scarier than watching Roar. So
I don't know if anything's that scary. It was scarier reading about the making of Roar, which we're
I
gonna
know
get
we both
into.
read the book.
Yes.
I did the same thing. I read the whole. I read in 2 sittings. I did because
Yeah.
I had to stop because I had to go somewhere. But
It's a page turner,
my
and
God.
hearing stories
It's
about
riveting.
people that you grew up with, and then to know the
Yes.
history.
is.
It's so great. Our other sponsor is Panache Optical Gallery in Palm Springs. It's a luxury showroom. They do all of your custom-made sunglasses and eyeglasses. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at On The Rocks and Air, OnTheRocksRadioShow.com, and on Facebook. We're going to get to Tippy, but real fast, I wanted to just play a little trailer from Trailblazing Women.
Sure.
To kind of get a little feel for
Absolutely.
our listeners. So it played in October, but it's still in rotation.
Exactly. You can still go to On Demand and watch it and see some of the people that we interviewed.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Pioneers, creators, and icons, making strides since the earliest days of cinema.
What an amazing activist she was on a lot of different levels.
Still, women must strive to make their creative voices heard.
She wouldn't take no for an answer. It was never easy.
TCM, in partnership with Women in Film, examines the achievements won and challenges faced by women in their 100 years of movie making with Trailblazing Women, actresses who made a difference.
And these are the women whose shoulders we stand upon today.
Right from the first scene, she carries it.
8 nights of films, including introductions from accomplished actresses and industry experts with host Ileana Douglas.
She led the way, and she's very courageous.
Tuesdays and Thursdays in October, beginning at 8 p.m.
I was educated by being blacklisted.
For a complete schedule and in-depth content, go to tcm.com/trailblazingwomen.
You look at this and you say, oh my gosh, there's a powerful woman.
On TCM, Let's Movie.
That's
Love
right.
it.
Let's
It's
move
exciting
it.
to even watch the trailer.
I know it is. I get excited.
and you're in
I'm
it.
so inspired by. No, these were people that inspired me. I mean, my goodness, to get to work with Lee Grant and Gene Fonda, they're people I watched. That inspired
Bette Midler
me.
too.
Bette Midler.
Yeah.
Well, Bette Midler was a coup. That I met Bette Midler because I met her through my dance teacher because I take dance class here in town. And she was getting ready for her Broadway debut in Hello, Dolly.
That's going to be sold out forever.
Oh, my God.
Hamilton needs to move over because it's Hello, Dolly.
I know. I think the world needs a little
We
Hello,
need a
Dolly
little Hello, Dolly
right now.
And you got to interview Rita Moreno, and she does not age at all.
Yeah, Rita Moreno she's incredible. Jane Alexander and Lee Grant, who's again over 90, amazing woman. Just you forget that she was blacklisted.
Yeah.
She didn't work for 13 years, and she came back and she won an Academy Award. I mean, it's quite a story. But each one of these women had an incredible story. Jane Alexander, who ran the National Endowment of the Arts, and you can't imagine. In the climate of today, imagine an actress running. Well, they're going to try to stop the National Endowment of the Arts, but all the contributions that all of these incredible women made.
Speaking of incredible, legendary women,
yes,
I am so excited to welcome humanitarian, activist, actress, mother, grandmother, and an inspirational figure in film. Miss Tippi Hedren. I'm getting tongue-tied.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure. You actually, this was years ago, you actually called into the radio show. It was when Karen Cadle was on the show. And Joan Fontaine was watching the show from her house, believe it or not. Can you imagine? It was right before she passed away.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And then I got to meet you at it was an evening of Legendary Women by Tony Morrell, and it was a concert. You were there. Shirley Jones was there. It was a whole bevy of stars, and I mean, I was really starstruck. I think I came up to you and I did like, and then I walked away.
Yes, I remember you. Yeah. Yeah, it was unique.
It was unique. It's so exciting to have you here. Your memoir, Tippi, a memoir which is available on Amazon. You can go buy it. You can download it to your Kindle. What a page turner.
Oh, I'm so delighted to hear that. It's been a page-turning life.
It really has.
And I'm sure what we read is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes. This isn't a tell-all book.
It's tell a lot, though.
I tell a lot.
I will tell you. I love the way that the book starts, and you talk about the steamer trunk that you found, and it has a bunch of items. And it sounds like, from reading the book, you keep everything.
Well, not everything, but I keep a lot of stuff. And fortunately, I have a very big place in which to keep it. I have a whole building in which to keep things, and I do. And I think it's a little excessive that I do that, but
I don't think so.
But at the same time, I enjoy it, and I treasure things and photographs and memorabilia and all of that sort of thing. I have a little museum. And you have to come out to Shambhala.
I definitely do. And I just found out that you do monthly tours.
Yes, we do.
You know who I ran into? Todd Sherry. Do you remember Todd Sherry? He's run into you, but I ran into him last night. But he's taken the tour a few times.
Oh, wonderful!
So I'm gonna have to do it.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
If you have do you still have the pin, the little bird pin?
I still have the pin.
Oh, that would.
I do. In fact, I had it duplicated. And I don't wear the real one. I wear the facsimile just in case that, one of those awful things happen. That
yes.
The latch comes undone
and
you lose it.
That's smart. I'd like to see that.
We're referring to, of course, the gift that Hitchcock gave you when you found out that you were in the Birds.
Yes.
And I love that you addressed one of the myths was that he gave you, or he gave your daughter a doll of you in a coffin. That story has been going around forever. Where did that start?
well, it was because the doll, which was very beautiful, came in a wooden box. And somebody got the impression that a wooden box, it was a coffin, and it wasn't. I have to say that it was not Hitchcock's desire to make Melanie miserable. It was to do something really lovely for her, and so get over it, everybody.
It's that Spitfire attitude that's throughout your whole book, and you talk about your time with Hitchcock. Obviously, it was a very traumatic time in your life. Your relationship with him was very tumultuous. I can't even imagine how it played with you physically and emotionally. But throughout the book, you still have respect and you still thank him. I mean, you still thank him in your acknowledgments.
Absolutely, I do. Men will always be men, and fortunately and unfortunately. But there are times when they get carried away with themselves and think they can control you. And some of us, you won't handle that very well, and I don't handle it well. And being told something that I was not prepared to do or acquiesce in doing, it was a very fast death. So
what I find interesting is that he was so persistent. And that he was so angry that you didn't acknowledge his advances, which makes me think that a lot of people must have said yes, and because he didn't go on a rampage really with anybody else. It was you. He was focused on you.
Yeah.
I mean, he had your handwriting analyzed. He followed you.
Bizarre.
He drive by. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
But a huge legendary director. How do you work on set? And maybe you can talk about this too, because your piece that you did with Jennifer Tilly and Vanessa Redgrave, working with the director was a nightmare. But how do you make yourself so available on screen when there's all this emotional turmoil going on with the director?
Well, unfortunately, it makes your life miserable. It really does. However, I was a very, very dedicated actress, and the important thing was to get it on film. And I just put everything out of my head and concentrated on what I was supposed to be doing.
I think that, what I got out of the book, which I thought was so fascinating, was the kind of Cinderella-like quality of your early life, that a woman, walks up to you and hands you a card, and you become a model. And it's relatively easy. And so therefore, then oh, it seems like the most natural thing in the world. I've been told now I'm going to be under contract to Alfred Hitchcock. So that to me must have been the innocence. How could anyone suddenly deal with? You've been groomed, and Edith Head is doing your clothing,
Yes.
and I was wondering if you could talk about that, what that period was like, because that must have been. I mean, what prepared you for that kind of?
Nothing can prepare you for it. But
Edith Head is doing your clothing. I mean,
well, I was kind of used to working with those kinds of talents, which was fabulous just because of the modeling issue. And I had been to Paris and met many of the designers, and it was, it was part of my job as a model to know what was going on. But to all of a sudden be thrust into this completely different vocation and artful vocation, it was a stunning time for me. And, I kind of went through it all with, like, okay, this is happening to me, and how am I going to deal with it? And I didn't let any of my morals down. I didn't let anything change as far as my way of thinking. And it all worked. It wasn't easy.
Well, especially the first film being The Birds, and you have to work with mechanical birds and live birds, and that scene that took 5 days to film, and it's 1 minute on screen. But the audience, as a viewer, my heart leaps in my throat, almost like when I watch Roar, especially knowing the stories behind it. So not only being thrust in this huge picture with this huge director, figuratively and physically, but then having to deal with all this, and it's a very dark piece. Yes. And then from that into Marnie, I mean, psychologically, how do you keep your strength together? I mean, I know you suffered from exhaustion, which you address in the book, but how do you recover from that?
I don't know. I really enjoyed all of it. I really did. I loved. I got everybody in place, and what my relationship was and what their relationship was going to be with me. I had all of that figured out, and it was working. And it was a really one of the most impressive times of my life, dealing with those people. And The Birds was my first film, so that was, my education in becoming a film actress. And a kind of a tough way to go, actually. But I had really, really good people around me, and it all worked. I put all the things that bothered me, I got rid of them very, very fast, and I let my feelings known as to how my life was going to be, not how somebody else wanted my life to go, and it all kind of worked out.
I don't know
fairly well.
There was a book that I read that Camille Paglia did about The Birds, and she calls you the ultimate Hitchcock heroine, and because of The Birds. And I feel that. And one of the things about The Birds that I love is that I think that because of The Birds, it overshadows that the acting is incredible, and the relationships between the actors is like a very, very deep psychological play with every character.
It's a great cast, too.
Oh, it's incredible. But your relationship with Rod Taylor,
Jessica Tandy,
Suzanne Pleshette.
Suzanne Pleshette.
It was amazing.
Your relationship with Suzanne Pleshette is one of my favorites.
Yes.
That's just heartbreaking. I think, again, that's one of the reasons that the film holds up, for me for so long, is the interesting psychological implications of, Suzanne Pleshette being there, and now you're replacing her. You have to spend the night at her house. It's cruel. It's so cruel. It's that she gets killed by the
poor woman.
No, it's like, I don't know.
Highly dramatic.
I mean, that's what's to me, the movie is so monumental that when you were filming it, I'm curious, did you just think it was about the birds, or were you aware of these deep psychological undertones?
Oh, no, we were aware. We were aware of that, and we tried to film it that way.
Yeah. Because to me, really, it's like a Tennessee Williams drama.
Oh, yes.
Underneath.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible, the chess pieces. I love the film.
And we couldn't let those birds take over the whole movie. I mean, come on. Just because they were the title.
I wanted to play some of the promo video. This is you and Alfred Hitchcock. It's the black and white one, Kurt. And it's you having to promote. I just wanted your comments as you watch this. This is rare footage, and there's actually no sound to it. So this was after the film was made, and I think by that time you weren't really speaking to him. But to all intent and purposes, I mean, look, having a good time, smiling. That must have been really hard.
Yeah, it was. It was.
And I wanted to talk about the dynamic with his wife, Alma. In fact, Alfred and Alma, I call him Alfred like I know him, they were your acting teachers. So not only were you involved in this on the set and in your personal life, but I mean, you had to act. What were their acting lessons like?
It was wonderful being coached by Alma. It was wonderful.
So, but she really knew what was going on, and in a way, she supported it by not acknowledging it. That must have been hard for your relationship.
Once.
Oh, she did.
She did once, and I remember it so clearly. We were standing against an elevator door, and we were both waiting for the same elevator. And she looked at me and she said, "Tippi, I'm so sorry you have to go through all of this." And I looked at her and I said, "But Alma, you could stop it."
Yeah.
And her eyes sort of glazed over, and she turned and walked away. So, she acquiesced to all of it. It was just, that's the way he was.
I want to talk, you worked with another amazing director in A Countess for Hong Kong. Charlie Chaplin directed that. And you did that with Marlon Brando, Sophia Loren. Love Sophia Loren. Gorgeous.
Oh, yes.
What was it like working with Charlie Chaplin?
It was hysterically funny because he, as you know, was a superb actor. And in his direction took form in his acting out all of our roles. Well,
which Marlon Brando didn't
like. Marlon Brando really didn't like it, and he wanted to quit. And Charlie said, "Well, you can't. You're under contract." So he had to deal with it. But he was really, really miserable about the whole thing. But Charlie was such a delight to watch. He'd go out onto the stage and he would become my character. He would become Marlon Brando's character, whoever was in the scene. And it was fabulous watching him. It was absolutely beautiful watching him.
I don't know if I could work that way, because where's the exploration that you can do when you're taught how to say the line or how to move? Where's your self-exploration in your character? No.
You just watch Charlie, that's all.
No,
there was no real direction. He really did act out all of it.
And he actually did the score to the film too.
Yes.
Yeah,
which multitask.
Amazing. You actually had a run-in with Marlon Brando. You actually spent an afternoon with him.
Yes, I did. It was life-changing, which I talk about in the book. He was again a larger-than-life character. And after the meeting, I had a boyfriend at the time who was also a director, so I was invited up to the compound, and I didn't go. And I always say that was my biggest show business regret, that I didn't go. But I was so afraid I was going to be chased around the compound.
I don't think he was going to be doing much chasing, though.
But I wondered. But he was so intriguing. The afternoon we spent, was so intriguing that I did wonder, should I go? But that's always, as an actress, you always have to, it's a interesting finesse that you need to have.
Yes, absolutely.
When called to the director's trailer for lunch, and is it lunch or is it? I mean,
or is it dessert?
No, the funny thing is sometimes it's just lunch, and you're like, oh, okay, it's just lunch. Okay, I don't know how to deal with either. But sometimes.
I don't think men have to deal with that. It's
no,
so
you
awful.
don't. I don't think you do.
Marlon Brando hit on you. Marlon Brando hit on you.
Yeah,
and John Kennedy hit on you too. I mean, he sent a car for you unannounced.
Yes,
that was a great. That's a great story in the book.
Yeah, that was. I was stunned. You know what? And I was really disappointed in the man that he would pull that card. I thought, oh, just one of the others,
And that was early on too.
Yes, it was.
Before.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody sort of knew.
So Satan's Harvest, a film. That's where you fell in love with your first lion.
That's true.
And the rest of your life is history now, captured in Tippia, a memoir. The way that you write about your relationship with the animals, it's so moving that I feel emotionally attached to your animals.
Oh, good.
And everything that you went through from having cubs in your house, running around Beverly Glen. I mean, can you imagine, like, the neighbors? I just can't even imagine what that's like.
Or going to lunch with them.
Yes.
Oh, the times that I've been going through, up through people's homes, through one house and the other, and trying to find this lion, and I don't want to knock on anybody's doors because I don't want to.
Have you seen a lion?
Yeah, yeah.
There goes Tippy again.
Yeah, there she goes. And the time that one of them got loose, and I didn't know where he was.
One time,
Casey
yes,
was one time. Yeah,
one book.
It was one time, but I had to go out and find him because I didn't know where he was, so I had to go. And I caught him. He was going all the way down the end of the street, almost going on to Beverly Glen. And so I am running down, and I'm trying. How am I going to get his attention? And I thought, okay, I'll start limping because as soon as you do something different with your body, that's what interests them. And so I called him, like, Casey, and he turned around, and I started limping. Very, very extraordinarily obvious limp. And I'm thinking, oh, I hope the neighbors aren't looking out at me. And he turned around, and he came back to me, and he's kind of doing this prowling thing. He's going to get me. And I thought, okay, I've got him. And he got up close to me, and I was able to grab the collar, and we marched home. But, some of the stories we've had with these big cats has just been, it's a miracle we all survived, though.
It definitely is a miracle.
Yeah.
Because when we were doing the movie, there were all kinds of situations. My husband was an incredible writer, and he had a great imagination, and he put us in some horrible situations with those cats, and it's amazing that we all survived. It really is.
I want to play the trailer of Roar for our listeners that might not know, and then we're gonna talk about this 5-year saga. Thank you, Kurt.
Jerry, you're going the wrong way. Go!
I'll be really honest, if I may. Reading the whole part about Roar and the family and the animals, I didn't know if I applauded you for being so passionate for making this your life mission that literally turned your life upside down. Mm-hmm. I didn't know if I applauded that or if I was like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, what were we all thinking to get involved with this? Yeah.
And the idea was to have a fun family film and have your animals around you. And it's
9 months shoot.
In
Turned
5
into
years.
5 years.
I love the story because it's such a testament to independent filmmaking, running out of money, stopping production, being flooded out, people injured on set, cast members coming and going.
It's like a Werner Herzog saga. As I was reading it, I'm surprised he wasn't at the helm.
Right.
Like something horribly going wrong. I mean, with the part you talk about in the book, like having the doctor on retainer. I mean, what was this doctor? You were at the hospital.
He got a new pool. He got a new car. He got everything.
It was a she. She
Oh,
was
she.
female doctor.
I mean,
Yeah.
oh, they're here again.
Yes.
Gangrene. No big deal.
And then when you talk about, it's like, oh, you know,
insane.
this
Like, you
happened.
had gang-
It's as
I
long
mean-
as it's black gangrene and not green. That's the most
Right.
important
But
thing.
I
You know, I
mean,
got it.
I just-
I got it.
That's
When I
crazy.
fell off my elephant.
Yeah.
And then seeing the footage and knowing the story, it reminds me of your passage in your book about Alive, you know, the movie that you did, and having
Well,
to refilm that
no,
that scene again. But
It wasn't being crushed by an elephant. I mean, it's a little bit different. I was, you know.
but with the acting, like literally caring about the piece so much that you literally just give it your all. I mean, that's exhausting. I would imagine.
Exhausting. It was exhausting. Yeah,
I'm
it was.
wondering if it had something to do with the era too, the time, and that that it had never been done before.
Probably. And we're two very, very persevering people that we put our minds to doing something. And we felt it was a worthwhile effort. And what came out of it was, you know, it had all kinds of fingers that extended from this, is the knowledge that we acquired just because of dealing with the animals that way, and the fact that in the United States there were no laws against breeding lions and tigers to be sold as pets. And I was irate about that when I found out that there was absolutely nothing, and that most of Washington said, "Oh, well, it's such a big deal, you'll never get that passed." So nobody ever did anything about it, and that really got me.
Never say never to Tippi Hedren.
Oh, God. So, you know, I did. I wrote up the bill, and I took it to my own congressman, and he said, "Tippi, it's so huge, it's not going to work." I said, "Well, can we try?" You know, and I went around and talked to the different people in Washington on both sides, and finally got the bill put up and voted on, and it was unanimously stop this insanity.
Right.
You know, which I went, phew. You know, it's about time. These are apex predators that they're selling as little, good pets, which is insane.
Working on the film and finally having it out, and it wasn't the big success that you thought it was going to be.
No, it wasn't.
I can't imagine what that too must feel like, and the depression that you get into, knowing that this pretty much changed your entire life. You could never go back to before. I mean, the things that you lost, but some things you gained, like the relationships in the book with the cast and crew. That's very heartwarming. But the depression of, okay, well, what now?
Oh, well, what now became the Shambhala Preserve and my getting a bill passed in Washington and all kinds of things that are, to me, much more important than making a movie. So it had its purpose and its result, and it was good.
I was going to say, what do you think? Because since I'm never going to be alone in a cage with a lion.
Never say never.
It's wise.
What are the things you learn? I love animals. What are the things that you learn from the cats, from lions and tigers?
Well, first of all, that when you're dealing with any exotic feline, you're dealing with an animal who can kill you, and would do so with no thought over his dinner. And I had situations. I survived those kinds of situations, and fortunately, all of us survived. And what my point was going to be always is to these animals should never ever be considered a pet. Never, under any circumstances, considered to be a pet. And if you're going to have any dealings with them, you better be very, very well educated in that specific species that you're going to deal with, because they manage to survive in the wild very, very well. And they find their own food, and they fight over it, and there's a whole hierarchy that goes on out in the wild, and we aren't able to give those animals that kind of a life. And we as humans have no right to take them in, and certainly no right to hunt them.
In addition to your animal activism, your work with Food for the Hungry, I didn't know to what extent. I knew that you were involved, but reading the book, I didn't know. Like, you're 6 weeks at sea, literally grabbing people that are just out in the ocean without food, water, and this is just whenever they called up, you just went, and you went.
Okay, off we go. But it was all important, and I felt so honored to be a part of Food for the Hungry, and the work that they were doing. And it gave me some experiences in life that were just unbelievable.
But you were in danger's way so many times. Where do you get that spirit? Was it instilled to you growing up, or it just came?
I don't know. Nobody else in my family or nobody has done the things that I've done. I don't know where it came from. I just say thank you. Thank you.
I just love your spirit. You write in the book that you're happy being on your own, and you don't get lonely, and that you just. God, I wish I felt that way.
No, sometimes I think, God, why aren't I just kind of sitting around moping because I don't have, a love interest in my life? And, well, I don't, so maybe I will, maybe I won't, but it's not going to ruin my life.
Well, and you're blessed with such a loving family. Your relationship with your daughters is so beautiful. I wanted to play some behind the scenes footage of you at your latest Vanity Fair photo shoot. It's just simply beautiful, and your interaction here with your daughter and granddaughter. Let's just take a look. Gorgeous. What are some of the top tips that you have in a photo shoot? What would you say to a new model hitting the scene?
A new model. Oh, wow. I'm not really good at giving advice. Okay. I'm not. I'm not good at it.
At least you're honest about it. I give advice out all the time, and I'm not good at it.
I'm really not, and I kind of think, gee, I really didn't give Melanie any, advice about, I think you should be a model. I think you should do this. I don't do that with anybody. And they have really just sort of blossomed. And I think it's a wonderful thing when a young person is able to decide for him or herself to do what he or she wants to do, not what the parent has, thought of for him or her. And that's not getting out of anything. I'm not saying it for that purpose. I'm not doing that. I just think my parents never told me, we want you to be this, or we'd like to have you prepared to be a lawyer. Why don't you be a school teacher? Why don't you... they never did that with my sister and me, and I never did it with Melanie either, and or my stepchildren.
You have such a unique spirit, you know, and it totally comes through in the book, and it's such a delight. So a little bird told me this year you're being honored with the Icon Award for the Oscars this year.
Yes. That little bird isn't so little either.
Yeah. It's a great bird.
Great bird.
The Oscar party, right. And this is just to add to your list of many awards, and I have to know, you got your Hollywood Star of Fame in 1973. Do you ever drive by just to say, hey, Star?
Yeah, off and on I do, and I have a couple of friends who go and polish clean it up every now and then, because I don't live anywhere near that, and we just kind of make a joke out of it. But it's a great honor to have that. I mean, really a great honor.
I just get the giggles because I'm so happy. This Thursday, actually, January 12th, you have a book signing at Vroman's in Pasadena.
Yes.
I want to tell our listeners, download the book, go buy the book, and there's great pictures in it too, especially when accompanied with such great stories. So get that ASAP.
Oh, thank you so much.
Will there be more books in your future? Did you enjoy writing the book?
I loved writing the book. I really did, and because I must say that I think I have. I almost called it the open door, because since that wonderful woman handed me that card on when I got off the streetcar and said, "Would you ask your mother to bring you down to Donaldson's department store? We'd like to have you model in the Saturday morning fashion shows." That, to me, was my first door, and I walked through it. And from then on, my life seemed to have had those kinds of things happen to me. And I really almost called the book The Open Door. And there were a lot of doors that opened that I thought, not going there, and slammed them shut. But it, and I might, for my next book, did I really say that?
Yes. Got to keep writing.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, it's so interesting when I interviewed, Jane Fonda, talking about, again, this next generation of, we're in this new climate now where there is no end. You're in your next phase. There's no third act.
No.
And I love
really.
that. So I hope you continue, because I mean, all the stuff about Roar was riveting, and
it was all real. There was nothing made up there. You couldn't make up things like that.
I'm sure you have a lot more great stories. So I hope you continue with the writing, and also again with all your social, the animal activism. It's so
I'm
important.
very much involved with that.
Yeah.
And I live there with all of
It's
the
your daily life.
lions and tigers. Yes,
Yeah.
I look out my living room window and I see a magnificent Bengal tigress. His name is Mona, and she, it's an awesome place to live. Really is.
I want you to get some bears, though, so you could say lions and tigers and bears. Oh, my.
But no boars.
No boars.
No boars.
No boars around here. And I'm happy to find that you are on Facebook, Tippi Hedren fan page, and Twitter.
Yes.
So we can find out where your book signings are going to be and keep track. And if you're in the area, even if you're not in the area, fly down, take the tour. And say hi to the lions and tigers and no boars.
Yeah, you can look us up at shambhala.org.
Perfect. And please think of making a contribution to keep the work going there.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
I love that your director of operations, I think he's your director of operations, was somebody that showed up during the filming of Roar.
Yes, he did.
On a motorcycle.
Yeah, he came down in his great big black Harley, and he was dressed in black, and he had a long beard and long hair, and I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. And so we were talking, and he said that he was looking for work. I said, well, what can you do? He said, everything. Okay. So he was hired, and it was true. He literally could do everything. And several years ago, I made him Top Gun at the Preserve.
I love
and
that
he's
story.
Just doing, and he's just been an amazingly wonderful friend, and he literally can do anything. It's just great.
Well, thank you so much for coming to hang out with us, for letting us in. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for your work on film. Thank you for your work behind film. Truly an inspiration and an honor to meet you. And I can't wait for Tippy Part 2.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll just get right on that.
Ileana, what are your social media handles?
I'm also on Twitter at Ileanarama, and my website is IleanaDouglas.com. Also on Facebook at Ileanarama. I have one fan question. I'm not going to ask you what your favorite movie is, but do you have a favorite movie that your daughter was in? And you could say the one that you were in together, but do you have a favorite performance of hers?
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of the title of it. Oh, God. How am I going to do this?
We can give you clues.
Yes.
Is it
Working Girl?
Working Girl.
I just talked about Working Girl.
She's
Working
great
Girl.
in that movie.
Yeah.
Vacuuming.
So
Oh,
good.
wasn't that hysterical?
One of the
Such a good
funniest
movie.
images.
She is so brilliant in her acting and her choices of roles and her choices of scenes and wardrobe and all of it. She's very much involved with the whole film.
Well, Working Girl was so iconic. It was such an 80s film. From the makeup, I mean, remember Joan Cusack and her makeup? I mean, it's just it's so funny. But what a great
in
film!
New York when that came out.
Oh, really?
It was really so much.
Yeah, Melanie. Melanie's an amazing woman.
Yes,
she really is. I'm so proud of her.
From Broadway to film to everything.
No, and just in her personal life, she's just an amazing woman.
And your granddaughter keeping the legacy going. 50 Shades of Grey. Oof, I've seen a few shades. I'll tell you that much.
You know, I haven't even seen it.
Do you think
Isn't that awful?
You want to? Because it's a little,
Well, that's what I hear.
Yeah.
I've heard that. No, I don't know whether I will see it or not. I kind of like to have our relationship just stay as it is. I mean, I guess that's very square of me, but
no, I think that's fine. I don't know if I want to see my granddaughter.
Yes. Maybe watch the airplane version.
Yes, watch the edited TNT version.
All Melanie's children are just absolutely delightful. Alexander is mine. I was with Alexander when he came into this world, and so he has a special place in my heart. And Stella is. We're just still wondering what that brilliant little girl is going to come into. It's real wonderful.
Beautiful. As well for our listeners, watch Trailblazing Women.
Yes.
On TNT, and come to the Turner Classic Movie Weekend. Is it called?
No, it's a week. The film festival. Yeah. It's you can look it up online, and I believe it's in April sometime. We're just sort of getting started behind the scenes.
Oh, they're wonderful. I've been involved with that.
Yes,
and it's so much fun, and it's done so well. And
yes,
yeah,
a class act.
I would suggest everybody go see it. And if everybody does, you'll be very busy.
They're busy. Oh my God, we're running around. It's my favorite time of the year, though. I'm like a kid. I never go home. I'm just running from film to film.
I'm sure.
Doing interviews and
the cruise too. You did the cruise, right?
I just did the TCM cruise, which sadly for now they say this is the last.
Yeah, that's very upsetting.
That's too bad.
Yeah, that is.
I did
too
the
bad.
cruise once too.
It's really fun.
That must be amazing.
It's fun.
Except like your fans, like you have nowhere to go. You're on the boat. Like if you have a crazy fan.
Well, unfortunately,
usually that's me. Usually that's me. I'm swimming out in the water. I was so excited. I remember we had the fake Disney. Did you go to the Disney Island? We had the Disney cruise, and they, and we were in a cabana, and it's like me and Shirley Jones and Tab Hunter and Ann Blythe.
Oh
and I'm like, I'm in heaven. It's like my kind of
Shirley Jones is fun.
Vacation. Oh,
and she loves her afternoon martini, which I'm a fan of too. So that's a good pair.
Yes, a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us.
You.
Kurt, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our listeners. Thank you to our listeners on iHeartRadio, True FM. We're now on the Reverie Network, so hello to everybody there. We will see you next week.
This has been On the Rocks with Alexander, every Tuesday at 7 p.m. on Universal Broadcasting Network. Find me on Facebook on The Rocks Radio Show. Tweet me or Instagram me at On The Rocks On Air. See you next Tuesday!